Hello, everybody.
And hello, people.
All right, so welcome to the Mikestand. Gonna give people a chance to come in. Hopefully our panelists will show up this week soon. Anyways, um, as always, a friendly reminder here: if you guys can like and share the stream. See if we can get some more friendly people in here to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. We'll try to answer the questions to the best of our ability. So, Rick, how did your day go today?
Oh, it went pretty good. Typical, well, almost a typical Sunday for me. Just, not much going on. I did not go to church today, unusually, but that's just because I figured, this is going to be my last week here. I've only been at that church, the church I've been going to two other times, so it doesn't, uh, just didn't really make a lot of sense, you know, you know,
With you leaving on Tuesday to go back to Hamilton?
Hamilton.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll end up going to the church I was going to before I left there. So, you know. So other than that, it's just been fairly normal Sunday for me. You know,
Yeah.
it's fairly normal yeah, Sunday can be for me. Yeah, at the moment.
Yeah. Well, let's see. So before we get started, I know because of the the signal situation, you can't share any links right now. But would you like to at least tell everybody, like, kind of give a little intro? You kind of know the shtick, right?
Yeah. Well, crazy enough, I'm actually going to be able to share a link. I figured out what my whole YouTube thing would be, so I've got that typed out in the chat. I'm ready to hit for the comment in this.
All
But
right.
yeah, as
Oh, oh,
people can
that's
tell,
cool,
I'm
right?
as
Go for
people
it.
can tell, I'm a Rick Piper of Cross Comics. I have yeah, as we were just alluding to, or I was just alluding to, I have a channel here on YouTube, which if anybody wants to go and subscribe, it would be nice if you did that. And yeah, I do comic stuff. I do a little bit of everything. And right now I am working on a fourth comic. Yeah, fourth comic. Although that's nothing, not a lot of that stuff is on there at the moment, but hopefully in the near future that will start to be on there. So yeah, there's the link. So thanks for checking it out if you do, and some even more thanks if you subscribe.
Hmm.
So I guess
All
that's it for
right.
now.
Yeah. All right. Well, I found something interesting out yesterday. As I was looking ahead, because I guess they finished the first season of Ninja Kamui last night on Toonami. So the for the next couple
Okay.
weeks, gonna rerun the whole season in a pair of marathons, and then on the weekend of the 24th, 25th, or no, the 25th,
Yeah.
26th, the 25th, 26th. That weekend,
Yeah.
they're going to one of the shows they're going to bring back is My Adventures of Superman, the one that was kind of critically panned for for giving into wokeism. So that's
So
season. That thing's getting a season two. I mean, granted, it didn't do as badly as Velma. Velma got a season two, obviously, but that one's not doing well either.
yeah,
So
yeah. I saw something. I didn't watch it, but apparently season two is worse than season one for it.
for Velma,
Yeah. Yeah. From what I seen a thumbnail on YouTube about it. I didn't watch it, but it's like okay.
uh, Well, I mean, for
it's
all I
just
know,
crazy.
for all you know, it could have been my coverage of it because I did cover a story on it.
No, well, no, somebody had an actual thumbnail that said about Velma 2, being worse. The whole thumbnail said about it, season
Okay.
2 being worse, you know, and it had it in, I think the title of the episode of whatever channel it was on. I'm not sure which one, but it's just enough to okay. I just didn't, watch it because yeah, okay, I can believe it easy enough.
Hmm.
So it's like
No.
whatever. And I don't know. Well, you said My Adventures of Superman got a second season,
Yeah.
yeah, or that's what you're saying. It got a second season, and
Yeah.
it just
I mean,
doing.
apparently it's gonna premiere on, I guess, Saturday the 25th, and then the next day will premiere on Max the next day. So premieres on Toonami
I
on the
might
25th.
actually.
Oh,
I
go
know I
ahead.
watched the first two. I know I watched the first 2 or 3 episodes of that, and it was a little cringy, but it wasn't too bad. I might actually download the full season and watch it as much as it might pain me to, because sometimes I think I was saying this on another show with you or in my chat. A lot of times, these shows, um, we get complaints about them, before they're actually shown, and they're supposed to be a lot worse than what they are.
Hmm.
And like I said, I watched 2 or 3 episodes, and it was, like I said, it was a little bit bad, a little pathetic. They changed a little bit too much stuff, in my opinion. But
Hmm.
you know, but besides the changing of stuff, I forget how bad or cringy I thought it was.
Yeah. Well, you had Jimmy
But
Olsen and Sarah White both turned black. Um, you had Lois. I
uh,
think she was, I don't know, Asian
made
or something.
Korean or
Yeah.
some sort of Asian. But it's just like, say, with the latest X-Men '97, there was a whole lot of controversy, and maybe still is a little bit of controversy around it.
Well,
And I've been watching
I
each
think I
episode.
think a lot of it doesn't really come into play until, you know they may not necessarily started off with a lot of the cringe stuff, as it were, but it probably comes into it more
Yeah,
and more as the season goes on. That's from what I've heard usually
yeah,
happens. It's like, a lot of times people get
yeah,
advanced screenings and stuff like that, realize, oh, this isn't what we think the show should be, and then
yeah. I get that and all, but we're at like season 6 or not season, episode 6 or 7. I've watched each episode so far, and it's actually not been. No, we might be at episode 8, so I think we're a good halfway through the season. Yeah, there's been probably a moment here or there, for some cringe in it. Like in the latest episode, there was a cringe, something that sort of would have reminded me more, I think, of the Japanese plight during World War II or whatever, for concentration camps and stuff like that. You know, about and the mutants and all that. So I'm not sure whether that it was intended to be that sort of thing, or that's what they were trying to hint at.
well,
Um,
I know, like,
but
one of the things that Yellow Flash had pointed out in particular, like when they decided to redraw Rogue for this series in particular, they yeah, I
yeah,
mean, you could argue they really, for lack of a better term, they defeminized her. You know, if you remember
um,
back in if you remember back in the
yeah,
'92 cartoon, the original cartoon X Men, she was pretty developed. She was pretty developed, and her
yeah,
breast and her butt
but
were pretty pronounced there, and
yeah, but I think that
now that
and
made her
although
like
she
so
is
flat.
well, I wouldn't say she's close to flat, but I think it's a cartooning
Definitely
style that
flattened
this
out her
that comes
butt.
down to.
It definitely flattened out her butt.
Yeah, yeah, they definitely didn't make certain things as pronounced. I'll say that, and that's probably a flaw on their part. But and they probably could have done it still with the cartooning style, but it is a different cartooning style than the X Men from '92. You know, the
Well,
original X Men
I think
animated series.
like one of the problem when I was covering all of that as well. When I was covering some of that as well, one of the points I made is that part of the problem with making Rogue's features less pronounced and basically you're taking an essential element out of her character because here's the thing. Okay, so as you know, Rogue's mutant abilities, are the ability
Yeah,
through skin contact to drain somebody's 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 energy. And if it's a mutant, they also take on their powers and stuff like that. It's like
yeah,
you know, it's like you can look, but it's one of those things where you quite literally a situation where you can look but you can't touch, because if you touch,
yeah.
you might have your life,
Well,
your whole life
well,
taken, literally taken from you if you touch her. But yet,
or could. And that's only if you touch her on the skin. You could touch her on her costume somewhere.
no, no,
So
it has to be skin to skin contact. It has to be
yeah, that's
skin.
what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, Mike. It has to be skin contact. You can touch her on her costume and nothing will happen
Yeah.
to you. You'll just you go on with life. But if your skin touches her skin, then you get some drain. And depending on energy drain depends on how long you stay in contact with her, of course. And then
Right.
same with the
But
powers if
but
you're somebody
the
power
thing
oriented.
Yeah, the thing about it is it also leads into the Southern Belle / femme fatale aspect of her. I mean, I remember the one
Yeah,
episode where where they were trying to basically, get Beast. They were trying to now they weren't trying to break Beast out. They were trying to break Colossus out because he was falsely accused of
morph out.
robbing a bank. It was when they introduced Colossus and Juggernaut, the episode that I'm talking about,
Oh yeah,
and Rogue and Storm go in there, you know, and it's kind of the
yeah,
whole thing where she's playing the Southern Belle bit where you know she takes off
yeah.
her glove and just lays
Well,
her
they
hand on
still.
the chest there, and the guard, well, you know what they say about cold hands. He touches her, and it's like cold hands
Yeah,
out cold.
and yeah, yeah. But the thing is, in this one, with me having watched it, yes, the cartooning style has changed. I won't say they've changed. I guess in a sense you could say they changed her look, but she's still good looking. She's still playing the Southern Belle. They have
Hmm.
they just haven't, like I said, accentuated the
But she's
features
not.
and
But for most people, she's not quite as appealing as she was before with the more pronounced features.
yeah.
And
But
it's
but
more
I
of a
think that's
wokeism. It's like,
more.
oh, we don't want to draw that way because we don't want her being objectified. But that was a key component of her character. That's what I was saying. That was a key component
Yeah,
of
yeah,
her character. Getting guys to drool over her and then
yeah.
get them
But the thing
vulnerable
is,
enough to where they would basically would you know. But anyways,
although this isn't the exact same this isn't the same series, but we have seen her drawn a little bit like she is here. Obviously, probably less
well,
so
in X Men
when we
Evolution,
see her in X Men
her
Evolution.
features weren't as pronounced, but that was only because they were being depicted as basically all being in high school, basically at that point.
Yeah.
Um,
Mid-teen, yeah,
yeah.
mid-teens,
Well, no,
yeah,
mid
and that's what I'm
mid to late
that I'm
teens,
saying it was a different
high
series.
school, high school. I think
Yeah,
at the
yeah,
youngest it might have been Kitty and Kurt might have been the youngest in the X
14.
Evolution cartoon. They were 15 when they were first introduced. Scott and Jean were like 16, 17. And then by the time the show ended, of course, Scott and Jean had already graduated and were in college, and Kitty and Rogue were like on the I think on the verge of graduate. But
Yeah, and I think she was in this one, Wolverine and the X-Men, but I forget how well she was drawn there. So she because of there's obvious reasons why she's not quite as we'll say voluptuous in X-Men Evolution. But
well,
the
again,
thing
she's
is,
younger. The
the point is,
argument could
I guess
the argument could be
she's
made.
young.
Maybe argument could be made in Evolution is that maybe she's still going through puberty, and maybe within the next couple of years after the show, maybe she does become more developed. But
Yeah, well, 14, 15, she would be probably fairly well developed. And we've seen her in comics probably at that age too, especially when she first appeared and she was, I probably fairly developed, I think, it's been a long time since I've seen anything like that in the early stuff of Rogue in comics. I guess my point is, yes, would we all like her a little bit more voluptuous in X-Men 97? Yes, a little bit more well like she was in the original X-Men animated series, but I don't think it's taking anything away from her character in X-Men 97. From the 7 or 8 episodes that I've watched myself, of which I think she's been in practically all of them, except for maybe one. So, and that's just my I guess humble opinion or whatever you want to call it.
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I'm kind of surprised that Tim and Metal and them aren't here yet, and Elk either, because
Yeah.
basically
Well,
I was
who
setting
knows for
time.
sure?
I was pretty much setting time. Oh, there's Elk. Hey, Zenu.
Hey, Elk. And I take it you sent Elk the
Yeah,
thing to
I
his
sent him. I sent him the link, so he should be able to come in. Elk, I sent you the link if you want to come in and join us in the studio here.
yeah.
Yes, you may. I just said that, so.
Yeah, he said just to, he's like, may I join you in just a sec? I guess he didn't realize that there's obviously the delay between us and him, and I guess he hadn't realized that you um, sent the link. And I would just say, oh, just every Sunday, check, you know, a few minutes before, 8, whether that link was sent or before you come into the chat, you could check. Because I think for the most part, Mike should be sending it to you every week, unless there's something specific going on on the panel where he's only wanting certain people on that panel that week.
And Elk just happened to
That's
be
if
one
you're
of
hearing
the.
all this, of course.
Yeah, because in this case we're gonna go over we're gonna go over the article we went over the other day, the conversation we were all having, him, myself, and Tim were having the
Yeah.
other day, but of course now just um.
Yeah, it'd be nice if we could get Metal, because then that would be at least 2 people that weren't here for that conversation.
Yeah.
Or that article that could.
Well, I sent Metal the link.
Yeah, it'd be nice if Tim could be here for it too. Yeah, yeah. Oh, I'm not saying you didn't. I'm just, saying that the last time it was you, Tim, and then Elk, of course, from the chat. But he was just in the chat. This way, it'll be live with what he's comments about it. I'm just saying, yeah, it'd be nice if Tim was here too, but Tim was already commenting on it, so it'd be nice for a couple new people to comment on it. Me and Metal being them.
Hey, Elk.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
No,
Perfect.
We see what looks like your living room there, I think.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. All right. I tried to get my.
I don't. I don't think
enter.
that. I don't think that's his living.
Oh,
No,
you
that's
don't
the
think?
background.
I think that's just a
Oh,
picture he got off the net.
oh, okay. Yeah.
It's somebody's nice living room, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Although I think somebody's put their TV a little too close to that fireplace.
Oh, we lost. I guess we lost the connection there to Elk for some reason.
Yeah, well, he might be changing his picture or whatever. I know he was saying
Huh.
something about trying to get picture, or I think that he's probably trying to get his wolf avatar up.
Huh.
Well, just have to keep an eye out for him coming around.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. We got him back.
I'll just let.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I can't get my wolf to
No
work.
problem.
I've got him on my screen here, but I can't. So yeah. So were you guys interested in copyright material?
Well,
Well,
we're going to go over that article we went over the other day, and then we're going to get back into that discussion. Hopefully with more people this time.
Sure. I did a little bit of research, not much, but I did the half-hour sort of Google search research.
Cool. Well, that can definitely probably come into the conversation as we read through the article. And of course, were you looking with what you were looking up? Was it from the Canadian perspective or the American perspective?
It was both, and there is a ton of material on the American perspective. There's like Harvard Law Review articles and Duke Law School Review articles.
Yeah, of course.
So the American is easy, and it's enormous. It's overwhelming. Disney's impact on copyright law in the last 100 years has literally been almost definitive. They've almost written it. To the point where a couple of the acts were called the Mickey Mouse Protection Act, was a reference to Capitol Hill.
Yeah, I knew they had a big thing to do with it because of, trying to keep their hands on Mickey.
Yeah, so it's so the Canadian material, there is some there. Like Canada has sued some people in Ontario Divisional Court, and so Disney has been an internationalist, and where America actually and corporations have probably the most effect probably on the world is through the World Trade Organization, or I think it used to be called GATT, the guaranteed or the genuine what was it, agreement on some global agreement on tariffs and trade, the GATTs. And then it turned into the World Trade Organization. Then it went into, there was like the Doha round, because it was being negotiated in Doha, which I think is in United Arab Emirates. So that's how American, like when you're talking about American corporate influence stretching around the world, it's not necessarily, mercenaries infiltrating some corrupt African government and taking over African diamond mines, although there's that too. But the way they do it with westernized countries is they do it through GATT and Doha and the World Trade Organization. So there's a lot of material out there. I haven't read nearly as much as I really should have.
I can believe that there's lots out there, especially for the states, and their stuff. And that's what this article was probably coming at it from that perspective, of course, because most of these companies that want to do this stuff is in the states, and that's where the biggest, or has been in the past, the biggest product release, for lack of a better way of saying it. Consumer element. has been. So
Well,
that's where
yeah,
they
one of
figured
the
they had to protect.
that we were talking about yesterday that was kind of a hot take on Elk's part was he believes people should only have copyright for like 10 years, and Tim had a bit of an issue with that, and he felt that but once we get a little bit more back in, once we get Tim here and we get a little bit more back into that conversation, you might understand what was being talked about there.
Yeah. Well, I could sort of imagine what Tim would say with that because I wouldn't myself. I wouldn't agree at 10 years. Maybe my while I'm alive, maybe a little bit after. Depending on what
Well,
my
actually,
family
the
might want to do with it.
article that I read that I thought was the best on it was called Mickey, Disney, and the Public Domain, a 95-year love triangle. And it was written for the Duke Law School review. And it tells you, I don't know if you want me to get into it so soon, but originally copyright law was 14 years in the United States until Disney got a hold of it. And it literally has been extended twice ever since it looked like Mickey Mouse was going to enter the public domain, to the point where there were jokes all over Capitol Hill that as 2023, 2024 rolled around, that somehow Disney would resurrect from the bones of the dead some sort of copyright protection from Walt Disney on Steamboat Willie. So it used to be 14 years. That was the standard. That was thought to be an infringement on people's artistic expression, on their freedom of speech, on their freedom of association. Because, of course, before that, for instance, if you want to write a Jane Austen novel, Jane Austen and zombies, etc., you, me, or Rick could pick up a pen and paper and write a Jane Austen novel. And why should we be forbidden? Why should it be forbidden that we write about certain topics, like as though it's some sort of star chamber or other? Oh no, we can't write about this topic or that topic. It's forbidden. But oh no, when it comes to not even the owner, not even Walt Disney himself, or not even Marvel, not Stan Lee, although Stan Lee ripped off the copyright from other people. So not even the original creators, like of Marvel material, not Stan Lee, not Jack Kirby, he doesn't get protection. Stan Lee got protection for his copyright, and Stan Lee's dead now, yet Stan Lee's bones have been interred with Disney. And now Disney is getting copyright protection.
Elk, if you can hold your thoughts for just a moment. Rick, I don't know if you can because of your signal issues right now, but is there a possibility you can message because Metal, because he's not on Facebook right now. I don't know if he saw that I sent him the link or not. Can you try to maybe reach him on like one of the other Twitter or wherever? Just because I'd like to have him in on this discussion. And Tim's apparently on Facebook, but just not. Okay, I guess now he's not. But
Let's see. Mike was wondering if you are going to be able to make it to. Yeah, and in some ways I get it, but in some ways I don't. A corporation, I guess it's profiting off of somebody's intellectual property is the whole deal.
Not only is it profiting off someone's intellectual property, it's actually restricting the freedom of expression of millions, hundreds of millions, if not billions of people around the world in order to exclusively profit. That's why the extension of copyright is looked on negatively by many. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to write
the
Mickey
thing is,
Mouse, or if you want to write Iron Man, write Iron Man. But why the hell can't I write about Iron Man?
Because he's not your property.
Well,
He's not your property, and that's
my freedom of expression. Though, why should they control what I type into a keyboard? Why should a corporation have a say?
Well,
My
He wasn't talking about as much corporations, though. He's talking about the individual artists and writers themselves, the people who actually created it.
yeah.
Okay.
never the original creator. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't think most people care, even Disney or Marvel or whatever, care about you writing a story on your typewriter or your computer. You can do that. They just don't want you selling it and making money off of it, which is different.
That's not true. You can still be sued for interference with trade if you just That's what people doing fan films tried to do. Is they tried to say, "Oh well, I'm just making a Star Wars movie, but I'm not profiting off it. Therefore, don't sue me." That doesn't fly. They can still get your material.
Oh yeah,
removed.
they can. They can for sure, and some have. There's the biggest one probably in recent history with Star Trek with Akanar, or I forget how it's pronounced.
Yeah.
That fan film, but that guy built a studio with it and all that. There's a big thing of there, but and like you said, there's two extremes, really. Like I said, selling the stuff and just typing it up on your computer. People have been making fan fiction for years and putting it out there, and not much is done. Yeah, and I know finding out when I started going to conventions, right? I asked some people about their drawings. How do they get away with making these drawings and doing a print run and selling them? Well, as long as you're not making over a certain amount, they don't care. DC and Marvel don't really care about you selling, a picture of Superman or Spider-Man, that you drew.
That nevertheless is. I think that's a good thing. But nevertheless, if they did want to care, they could, and they could destroy your ability to communicate through the web.
Yeah, well, they could destroy my ability to create their characters, which is would be their right in a lot of ways. If you create something, shouldn't it be your right to control it a little bit?
It's only a right because Disney twisted the American Congress around its finger and made it their right. And again, for instance, the other example is drug companies. Drug companies.
I'm not even talking about this.
Drug company is obvious in that if you invent a cancer drug, which many companies spend billions of dollars doing, you would say, "Oh, well, shouldn't they have a right to own their cancer drug?" Well, they only get to own it for 15 to 20 years. Because the public good of allowing generic drug manufacturers to simply take the formula of the drug.
The problem with that argument is you're arguing apples and oranges there, Elk, because the cancer drug, there is the idea of, okay, the cancer drug would be a benefit to the entire public. So therefore,
yeah, but I get it. I get his point, though. They are both technically intellectual property, and that's ultimately what we're talking about.
When it comes to like somebody's character, no, that's not something the public. That's not something that the public has a right.
Well, hilariously, and this was something else I was going to get into when we opened the debate. As they point out in Duke Law School, it says, in fact, the public domain is Disney's bread and butter. Frozen was inspired by Hans Christian Andersen's The Snow Queen. The Lion King draws from Shakespeare's Hamlet, biblical stories, and possibly an epic poem about the founder of the Mali Empire. Fantasia's The Sorcerer's Apprentice comes from a poem that I enjoy by Bangatha, and Fantasia and Alice in Wonderland, Snow White, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella, The Little Mermaid, and Pinocchio come from stories by Lewis Carroll. The Brothers Grimm, Victor Hugo, Charles Perrault, Hans Christian Andersen, and Carlo Collodi. So Disney is an incredible hypocrite by claiming, oh, well, we should extend copyright when most of their material is actually stolen from the public domain and then twisted into a new form. And then that would be okay. I don't have a problem with that. It's that when now, if you go to make a movie about The Lion King or Alice in Wonderland or Snow White, in reality, de facto, no matter what de jure law is, de facto, if you make a movie about the Little Mermaid or Pinocchio, you have to worry about Disney suing you into oblivion simply by filing a lawsuit in an American or Canadian court and racking up $100,000 legal bill that you as a private citizen can't afford. It's an obscenity. It's an absolute obscenity that they're allowed to do that, because they have effectively, de facto, they've made themselves the owners of the Brothers Grimm and Victor Hugo and Hans Christian Andersen properties. They are the biggest hypocrites in the world when they defend copyright, when most of their material is stolen from the public domain.
Yeah. Well, in that way, I can agree with you a lot. Although I don't think Snow White, when they first made their original Snow White, was public domain or whatever. It's just
Brothers Grimm.
Well, it was probably public domain because that stuff wasn't made originally when there was copyright in that sense. But yeah, I get what you mean. But you could still make a Snow White movie or whatever. You obviously couldn't have it exactly like Disney's Snow White. In fact, there is another company doing a Snow White at this point. I think it's the Daily Wire.
I know that there have been like, I know that all of them, back in the golden age, right? In the golden age of cartoons, I do know that a number of different studios, Paramount through Popeye, MGM through Tom and Jerry, Warner Brothers, through Looney Tunes, all that. I know a number of different companies have done animated adaptations before of Cinderella. In fact, I know in the case of Paramount, it was done 2 or 3 times where they did variations of Cinderella. They had, some Cinderella. They had Cinderella, and then they had a Betty Boop Cinderella, and then they had a Popeye, Cinderella. So, but you can't necessarily say from those perspectives. And Tim just emailed me back that he's busy. All right, but you can't necessarily call it stealing from public domain if it's public domain. If they decide to pick it up and then and they choose to copyright it, because it's been in public domain. I think that's still
well, they're copyrighting their version. They're copyrighting their version of it, obviously.
De jure, what you're saying is true, but de facto, it's not. And again, in the 1930s and 1940s, for one thing, the copyright law hadn't been fleshed out like it is now under Disney's tutelage. But the other thing is Disney was not the multi-billion-dollar behemoth that it is now. Nowadays, Disney is famous for having divisions of lawyers and suing its critics into oblivion. It's not known for its free speech. It's not known for its free expression of its employees. It's not known for the free speech of its authors or its creators. It's known for having them all sign NDA contracts and sue them into oblivion if they dare disagree with the mouse. And again, you de jure, in law, you may have the ability to make a Snow White movie. Good luck in getting it in films. I mean, if you're, Ben Shapiro, maybe they have the stroke to do that. But if you or I or someone just made a Sleeping Beauty or a Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and we weren't like Ben Shapiro, a Harvard Law School graduate, we would quickly be out of resources simply because you can file lawsuits that cost $10,000, $20,000 a month to fight a lawsuit. And most people simply settle at that point and sign an NDA with the mouse saying they'll never do it again and they'll never discuss it in public, or they'll lose their house or their home or their life savings or their wife or their spouse or all of the above. So de jure, sure, there's that exception. De facto, there is not. Disney has locked down public domain properties for decades and threatened to sue anyone who dared object.
But and that of course is wrong of them. But although I haven't read the article, and I didn't listen to you guys talking to it the other day, let's forget about Disney because maybe they're doing it wrongly. But the copyright in general, just for like creators like me, Tim, and the other ones that should like my Canadian Shield should like in 10 years, or 14 years, should I'm still alive in 14 years. Should somebody be able to profit off my property of the Canadian Shield that I've created?
Well, the counter argument to that is that not only should they allow to, because it's their freedom of expression, because it would add artistic expression into the world instead of taking it away and forbidding it, but even on a personal level, it would quite probably benefit you, because the more famous your property is, it has been shown, at least that's the argument in the Japanese market, is that when someone else makes your property more famous, chances are your sales will increase and your profits will increase on your property. But Disney makes this twisted argument that, oh no, it's got to be Mickey Mouse the way we do it, or it's all wrong.
Yeah, actually, Elk, your Japanese argument's a little off too, because Tim reminded me of something, even though I kind of knew a little bit about this already. But Toho has gone after people for trying to, use their stuff.
So they've done that in the States. They do that in American courts, not in Japanese ones.
Yeah, well, I know in Japanese, Metal has told me about this. They have something called Dajon or Dijon. I forget how. I'm pretty sure it starts with a D, or how we would pronounce it. And it basically does allow, quote unquote, fan fiction and people to profit off it a little bit, but we've got to make some sort of thing with it. Let's see. X. I'm gonna try and go to Metal's site, Extendless Chaos. You probably know what I'm talking about because you're referring to it there, Elk. So let's see.
All right. Well, thank you. All right. Under.
Here, I'll put a link. This is the page where Metal has about this sort of thing on his website.
From the looks of it, we're not gonna get. I don't think we're gonna get Tim or Metal on tonight. And I really wanted to have them on when we had this discussion. Yeah. So I think we're gonna end this particular conversation here and now, because I want to have this discussion again. I want to go over this article again, but I want all of us here to do it. I don't want, because I want everybody's input on this, and it's like, we can't get, I would also like to try to get RJ in, but that's going to be a little bit harder, but, because I know he knows a lot about copyright. He, as compared to most people, the layman, he knows quite a bit about the copyright issues as well. So I want to at least make sure that Metal and Tim are also here with us. So I think for tonight,
but there's a link to what I was saying. Metal was talking about the Elk.
Yeah. So, anyways,
do you have another article up for?
No, I was planning to do. This was basically the big thing tonight. The only other thing I was planning, but that didn't really come through either, was I was, if what I was going to try to do was get Doc Blaylock on, so he could, promote his book, but he said he wasn't available today. So, so the two big things I had planned, neither of them really came through.
Have come to fruition.
No, it's not,
Yeah.
I have to admit I'm feeling a little frustrated right now because of this, but and I don't, well, I mean, we can still talk about, like, maybe if you want to, well, Elk, I think, was in the chat when I think Elk was in the chat when we're, at least for a little bit, when we're reading through the comics on Friday. But Rick, did you want to give your impressions on what we read from Friday, through Fox Feature Syndicate with Weird Comics and the rest?
Well, I know Weird Comics for the one or two comics that we read out of it didn't seem so weird, but maybe it did at the time because that time was a lot different than today. I know the writing especially in Weird Comics, did not seem quite as good. In fact, the best writing of all the ones that we read on thing was one of the characters that they've been doing for quite some time, and that was Patty O'Day. And some of the characters were shorter, which that just tells me, possibly those characters were already going into obscurity because
well,
they
let's see.
weren't
What we
as
found
popular.
out was, of course, Fox had both a Thor character and a Birdman character. Thor, which was later, of course, Marvel had their own Thor character as well, and then
what was the name of the wizard character?
Barbera, right?
What was the name of the wizard character?
What was that?
The winter character?
The wizard, the magician.
Well, the wizard, that was the previous week. That was from Harvey, I believe.
There was
you had Zarko or whatever. There was Zarko or whatever.
Oh, you're talking about Zanzibar?
Yeah, Zanzibar. That's the guy. I actually like that one.
Okay. Well, actually, okay, so you had Zanzibar the magician, and then you also had Stardust the super wizard.
Yeah, but he wasn't really a wizard, so.
I actually like Zanzibar. Again, the writing was suboptimal, but it was like a pastiche. It was like something that George Lucas would take, like a collection of soup, of like sort of thin soup, and make it into a great stew, like Star Wars, where he, went back to the 30s and 40s and just used tropes from it. Because that Zanzibar, he was doing, everything was a ray. He had about 4 or 5 different kinds of ray. He had like an electrifying ray and a defragmentation ray, and he had like a de-eleganzizer ray. And like I said at the end, I just wish that he had elixirs, because again, the writing was terrible. There was no real stakes. It was just like a linear unfolding of a bunch of stuff that happened, as Homer Simpson said, with no real emotional motivations by any of the characters. But it was so delightfully sort of 1930s, 1940s. It's like, oh, I'm going to go through the de-rayifying vision goggles, and I'm going to get my anti-ray goggles. And it was, again, it was like a pastiche, like a thin soup of every word that a comic book author would just throw into a story at, when he's got to get it done Friday after school and have it ready for the publisher on Saturday morning to print the comic. It's just, that's the sort of thing that he would have written. And it was so obvious it was that. But the guy who did it seemed to have a genuine love for the tropes of the time, even though they were pretty shallow tropes. All the tropes were in there of the Zanzibar. I had the demagnifying ray, and this is my heat ray, and this is my cool ray, and this is my X-ray. And so I actually enjoyed that one. It sort of, the other thing I noticed, there was another one where there was, again, it was a true crime one, and there was some sort of fortress on a mountaintop. And again, it just reminded me that Superman and Batman, far from being like these unique, ultra creative characters, really were really derivative. Like there were all sorts of true crime fighters with the Fortress of Solitude, and with a journalist that they kept in the loop, and the journalists didn't know their secret identity, or they didn't know their secret identity, or they worked with. So these tropes that Superman and Batman managed to make billion-dollar properties out of, there were other guys like U.S. Shield and different. And Mike, you would know the names of these guys much better than I do, because when you read your stories, frankly, the characters' names go in one ear and out the other. But I do enjoy it. But it's again, yeah, there's all these guys.
Yeah, the characters we went over from Weird Comics. It was Thor and Birdman, and then we also did Patio Day from Wonder World Comics, and then from Science it was Navy Jones, who was kind of like, I guess, Fox's answer to Aquaman and Submariner. Let's see, and then from Mystery Men Comics, that was where Zanzibar was. And then Stardust the Stardust the Super Wizard was in Fantastic Comics. So those were the 5 features we went over. And
so the authors of those were obviously really terrible. Like they didn't put together a coherent story. But you could just tell, again, this was something they wrote because their uncle's cousin hired them, and their uncle's cousin was publishing the comic book, and he had to get 20 of them out in a month. So he farmed them out to his relatives and to like college grads and first year university like writing students and journalism students. And they all seem to be in New York. They didn't even bother to try to even leave New York. All the stories take place in New York, basically.
Well, that's because that's where all the comic book companies were at the time.
Yeah.
All the comic book companies at the time were in New York. New York.
Although with all these stories, I don't think any of them
at that point.
Yeah. Although I think with all the stories we read on Friday, I don't think any of them actually took place in New York.
Well, I was thinking of the true crime ones, especially. And although even when they're not taking place in New York, you can kind of tell they're by someone who's never left New York, or at least that's the impression I get. It's like it's very much a fantasy version of Zanzibar or whatever. It doesn't reflect a real person, place, or time, or any sort of sensibility of anything other than New York, or the imagination, a New Yorker's imagination of what a Chinaman, quote unquote, would be, or a New Yorker's imagination of what a far off exotic land would be, like the white Pasha of India. Although that guy was probably British and could have been to India and talked to like a colonialist in India. So that's an exception, actually. But the American ones seem strictly to be people's either in New York or people in New York imagining what other places are like, not that they'd ever been there. Like that. That's
you have to remember too. They all they could really do is imagine it, because it's not like today where you can just go on the internet and just find whatever you're looking for. It's like, so they did in some respects probably have to, use their imagination a little bit more than they do today. Because I mean, nowadays you can stream just about anything and everything, whereas back then they didn't have that same ability.
Well, that's definitely something I've noticed. Talk about changing cultural expectations with mass immigration. And Hollywood stumbled onto this same issue, only they stumbled onto it after the year 2000. Because from like Hollywood's initiation, I don't know, like 1905, 1912, whenever the studios left New York and New Jersey for there, when they had quote unquote foreign characters like William Shakespeare just had English actors. And like the Italians and the Mediterranean and the Dukes of Venice, they were all Englishmen, like in beards with funny hats, and that made you an Italian. And in Hollywood, it was the same. If you were like a Persian, it was Omar Sharif. Omar Sharif was the foreigner, and he could either be like someone from North Africa, or he could be Middle Eastern or Egyptian or Turkish or Iraqi, or Omar Sharif was quote unquote the foreigner. And then they even had like John Wayne, playing the Chinaman role that he had one as Fu Manchu or whoever the heck he played. But so it never occurred to North American studios that when you hire an actor, an actor can play like an Italian or a Frenchman or an Iraqi or a Turkish man or an Egyptian. You got an American who lived in Hollywood to play that role. But then come the year 2000, just the different expectations are like unbelievably changed, with the expectation that no, Hollywood should actually reach out and get like just a Taiwanese person to play someone from Taiwan, or they should actually get real Persians to play like the princes of Persia, where that never would have been the case even 20, 30 years earlier, because it was expected, no, Hollywood is Hollywood. Most people who live in Hollywood are Americans. Most Americans are white, with a few subsets of some others. So most actors are white. So most roles would go to white people who were playing different. And again, you were supposed to play make-believe. But now, because of mass immigration, we actually expect, oh, well, if you have an Indian character, it can't be like some Iraqi guy with like who changes his haircut. No, you actually have to get someone from India, and getting someone from Pakistan, oh, that's not allowed. Or getting someone from Egypt, that's not allowed. Or like getting someone from Idaho who just has a tan, that's not allowed anymore. And so
anyways, guys, I think for this week I do want to wrap up a little early tonight, just because I do want to still try to get back to this conversation next week if we can get everybody here. So I'm going to try one more week to get this conversation to go over this article as a full panel. If we can't do it next week, then we're just gonna move on. But this is something I think is a good conversation to have more people in here. But I want to make sure everybody's in here that I want in here. So
or that hopefully you can have in here.
So anyways, I think, as I said, we're going to wrap up here a little early tonight. So I think I'm ready to start winding down. So what we're going to do, we're going to do this day in each history, and then we'll have you guys close out and just wrap things up. All right.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. So May 5th, 24th. All right. So, anyways, today is Sunday, May 5th, 2024. Let's take a look back at this weekend in each history. So, on yesterday's date, 90 years ago yesterday. May the
4th. Oh yes, yesterday was May the 4th. Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you.
Yeah.
And then, of course, today should be part of it. Revenge of the 5th.
Yeah. The Terrytoons short, The King's Daughter, premiered in movie theaters on this date back in 1934, or on yesterday's date back in 1934. So this is the synopsis of the story here. Princess Fanny is held captive by a giant in a castle. He's musical, playing the top of the castle like a piano, but that doesn't make him nice or her happy. She sends a letter to her father, the king, with the help of a musical bird. The king calls for a volunteer, and the smallest knight steps forth. He traps a giant's guard dragon under the castle gate, then ties the dragon's tail around the giant's ankle, and has the dragon haul him into the sea. Just in time, because he was preparing to saute the princess. The knight saves her and returns in triumph. So that was a Terrytoons. Now, Terrytoons, of course, is the company that gave us like Mighty Mouse, Heckle and Jekyll, and all that. But with that, so that happened 90 years ago yesterday. Now, getting ready to move on to today. On this date, 25 years ago today, back in 1999, the 10th issue of Crimson, which was a title that originally belonged to Image, but DC picked up. On this date, 25 years ago today, the 10th issue of Crimson from DC's Wildstorm imprint went on sale on this date back in 1999. It sold for $250 with 32 pages. The title of the story was Lamentum. It was written by Brian Michael Augustin with pencils by Humberto Ramos, inked by Sandra Hope, Mark Irwin, and Trevor Scott, lettering done by Richard Starkings, and coloring by Alex Bayhawk. So 25 years ago today, the 10th issue of Crimson went on sale on this date, 25 years ago today. And 10 years ago today, WWE held its Monday Night Raw event from the Times Union Center in Albany, New York. It was the night after Extreme Rules, the pay-per-view that year that followed WrestleMania. On the night after it, the main event saw the Wyatt family of Bray Wyatt, Eric Rowan, Luke Harper defeat the Shield of Dean Ambrose, Roman Reigns, and Seth Rollins. Let's see. Bad News Barrett retained the WWE Intercontinental title over Big E. And then the show actually opened up with a 20-man battle royal, in which Dean Ambrose defended the WWE United States Championship, and the winner of the battle royal was Sheamus to become the new United States champion. So that happened 10 years ago today. And with that, I thank everybody for being here tonight. I'm sorry we went a little short again tonight, but I just kind of caught off. I was hoping more people would be here. But with that, stuff happens, right? With that, before we head out, I'm going to give my co-panelists here a chance to start with Elko counterclockwise to do an outro. If you get Elk, if you want to start, and then we'll go to Rick, and then I'll wrap things up.
Yeah, sure. I am not a YouTube creator. I just have loved genre fiction all my life, from cartoons to Sherlock Holmes to science fiction. Even schlocky science fiction has always had a place in my heart. And yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
All right. Rick?
Well, as the ticker says, I'm Rick Piper of Cross Comics. Just if you're hearing this and you like stuff that I had to say or want to hear stuff that I said or want to check it out, I have a channel. Hopefully that link will go in a second or two. There for my link. So hopefully my channel. If not, try the one up above. And yeah, just check me out. And if you like what you see and hear, subscribe. So we'll catch you later.
All right. And with that, we'll be back here, of course, tomorrow night with more niche news, and Rick will be with me, of course, going over the latest in niche, going over the latest in niche news. This Friday, of course, we'll be continuing our look back to comics history back to February 1940. This week we'll be focusing in on Hillman Comics. I believe it'll be Miracle Comics Volume 3 as well as Rocket Comics Volume 3. And I'll have Tim Olson with me this Friday. So with that, I thank everybody for being here, and I hope to see everybody back here tomorrow. Bye.
Have a good night.